Hey guys, Sam with Nexus Workshop, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Nexus Ultimate Prop Controller. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a couple advanced button games that you can do with the controller. So this is going to be diving a little bit deeper into some of the really cool workflow and logic and paths you can kind of build out within the controller itself, because it is super powerful, super flexible, and does exactly what you want it to do. I have down here a picture of my little prop controller. I've got the Nexus Ultimate Prop Controller here. It is connected up by hardwired network, which is giving it power over Ethernet, and that's how I'm powering my thing. And then I've got some buttons hooked up over here that we're going to be using. I've also got a relay and a light strip that I'm going to be using just to showcase when it's solved or not. Different than some of my other videos. In the past, I've done a lot of videos where we're walking through the setup step by step and building it out as we go. With these, because the setup is a little bit more built out, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the finished thing that I've got configured up here. I'll still step through all the important logical pieces, and then of course, you can load this up. I've got it baked into the firmware as you go. So you can take a look at it, experiment, play around, but also here, I'm just going to explain what I have built. So, like I said, we're going to be going over 3 games. The first of them I'm going to call like the nuclear codes. So I've got the 2 nuclear keys, and I need to turn them at the exact same time. Now, that doesn't mean I need to have both buttons pushed at the same time. It means I need to push them simultaneously. I don't care if 1 or 2 pushes first, but they have to both get pushed within a little set time period before it times out and says, nope, that's not the same time, try again. The way I'm going to do that, or I guess actually showing you that in action. So I've got my little setup here. I'm going to push the red button, and then I'm going to push the green button, and nothing happens. I'm going to push the green button, and then the red button, and nothing happens. But if I push them at the same time, then I get that green. And then I have it automatically resetting itself. So again, push them at the same time, and they solve. Push them one at a time, boom, boom, and they don't. Taking a look here in our setup, the first thing I've got is a couple of variables. So I have a couple of variables that I've set up for them. I've created 2. One is called one pressed, and that's sort of like a timer that I start. It is set to start up false, so none of them are pressed. But as soon as I press one of them, it sets one of them high, and then what it actually does is it sets it high, and then it sets it back to false right after that. And that's how we can tell if they've been pushed within that little timer window. The other one's called cleared. That one starts true because at the beginning we're ready to go. But that's basically like a reset or an arm or a are we clear to go forward and try the thing. Between those 2 of them, that's how we're going to get this behavior. Over here on the behavior tab, I have 4 different logic rules that I built out. One is right off the bat, I can't trigger anything based off button 1 or button 2 directly because I don't care which one gets pushed first. So I've got this either press rule. Its match is any, and it's looking at button 1 pressed and button 2 pressed. So when either of these things happen, this logic rule goes. That way I don't care about which button is which. It's just a button got pushed, this fires. My next rule is both are released. This is a match all because these both have to be released at the same time for this to fire. So button 1 and 2 are both released. My next logic rule here is called second press. So this says that button 1 and 2 are both pushed because while I only really care about the second press, they both do still need to be pushed in. So both of them are pushed, and my one pressed, my little timer, is true. So it hasn't timed out yet. When those 3 things all happen at the same time, that counts as a second press. And then I have my last one, which is the press timer start. So this says that either press happened, that logic rule from above. So one of the buttons got pushed, and it says that the one pressed, the timer, is false. It's not running currently, which means that we should set it. This is where I actually check that I'm in the armed state, so that I'm only doing this while I'm armed. And then the last thing it checks is that we are cleared. Cleared is true. So we're ready to go, the timer's not running, a button got pushed, and we're armed. Those 4 things together, let it run. Again, those are logic rules. They don't do anything. But those are kind of my main things that are going to process and happen. And then down here in action triggers is the do half of those. So the first one is called press timer. That happens when that press timer start activates. So when all those things were the case, then it's going to very quickly set the one pressed variable to true. Then it's going to wait half a second and set it to false. So there's my little timer. It says, hey, one got pushed. True. Nope. And that was my window of opportunity during that to push that second button. If I don't read both of those within that window, then it's false and it won't trigger the solve. The last thing it's going to do is it's going to make sure that cleared is false, because it's going to say, hey, we've entered our window. You need to not reevaluate until we get fully cleared from this. That's what keeps it from false triggering on that second push and keeps it isolated, because it's taking that cleared and it's toggling those on. And then only when it resets do they both go back. And that reset happens right here. So I'll actually jump one and come down to reset. Actually, sorry, that's not the right reset. It's the released where that's happening. And that is happening on the logic rule both release. So both buttons have been released. That's what's going to set that cleared back to true, make sure the window is closed, and that gets us ready to go back into it again. Then I have my main ones, my solve and my reset. My solve says, hey, that second press happened. So all of those states were all true at the same time. We were in the window, both buttons are held down and we're armed. And that tells my relay to turn on, my lights to turn green, and then set me to the solve state. Pretty standard for what we set up. And then my reset says, hey, when we exit the solve state, then turn the relay off, turn the pixels off, and make sure that we go ahead and fire this released. So when we reset, it makes sure that we're already in that cleared state. We're cleared, we're ready to go, we're released, all those good things. And that's actually one of the, just pointing that out, that is one of the cool things you can do, is you can make logic rules fire into logic rules. You can make action triggers fire action triggers. So you can just chain these things back and forth until you get the exact logic or behavior that you want. Again, that is this cool little button game that does this. All right, time for the second game of our button games. This one is going to be a simple Simon game. So it gives me an order and then I press the buttons in that order, but it keeps changing state by state. This one can be a lot of fun for your players. It can also get really rough and have them pulling out their hair. Use with caution, I guess. But let's walk through what that game looks like. So down here, I've got my board with my buttons. What it's going to look like is the first time I push any one of these 4 buttons, it's going to show me the pattern for stage 1. Stage 1 was red. I push red. It now shows me red, green. Red, green. It now shows me red, green, blue. And then my last state, it shows me red, green, blue, white. That's my full thing. And I've now solved Simon. So it gives me a little animation, my relay tripped, and then it resets itself. Now showing you again, if I push any button, it gives me my first stage. If I push the wrong button, then it's going to fail and give me this yellow. And show me my red again. If I go ahead and do that, now I'm on stage 2, red, green. I go red and then blue. And that's also going to fail me. And then put me back and show me, hey, no, red. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the config. Over here in my configuration and on my definitions page, I've got my states. So this is a very state-driven game. I have armed, and then I've got stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and solved. I also have these little grab handles to put those in the right order because their order matters, and I'll show you why in a bit. But that's how my game is progressing from we're ready to start the game to we're in each of these stages where we're looking at those input sequences to we've solved, and that auto transitions back to armed after 3 seconds. Over here on the behavior tab, I have a couple logic rules that are just kind of aggregators to take all of my inputs and just make them fire things. So I have when any button is pressed, that fires this logic rule. That's how we work that first time where we're armed and I can push any button and it takes me into stage 1. I have when any failed, so I have my 4 input sequences, and when any of them send a fail, then it aggregates that into a single action trigger. And I have any success, if any of my success. Let's go ahead and look at my actual input sequences. So I have 4 input sequences. They are just ordered button sequences. If I look at this 4th one, it's called sequence 4. They are in the instant fail mode. Different than continuous, which we've used previously. In instant fail, it means that if I push the wrong button, it sends a fail command. Continuous doesn't actually fail, it just doesn't succeed. So that's kind of a different way of using this. And then also note that my sequence 4 only works in stage 4. That's how I'm taking each of these different ones, tying them to a specific stage, and that's the only place that it accepts button inputs. I have my 4 buttons tied to the 4 tokens, my red, green, blue, and white, and then I have my correct code, which for sequence 4 is red, green, blue, and white. Could be whatever I want it to be. Note that in like sequence 2, for instance, it's set up the same way, has the same tokens, but the correct code is just red and green. It's important that it has all of those tokens, because if it doesn't have a button mapped to a token, then that wouldn't create a failure when I pushed it. So what I did was I created sequence 4, and then I actually duplicated it, and then just changed the correct code on each of them and changed which state they operate in. An interesting thing I'm doing on this one is I'm using output sequences for my lights. So whenever I push a button, and when it shows me that sequence of which buttons I need to push, it's turning on those different lights. It's doing that here with output sequences. I could have done this with action triggers. It was just a little easier for me to kind of separate these out as my building blocks. And I wanted to do them as these building blocks because here I've defined what is a red light. The red light is turning the pixel lighting on for just these two nodes, these two individual pixels, number 7 and 6. And that is 0 indexed. So I do 7 and 6, 5 and 4, 3 and 2, 1 and 0 for my 4 sections that each of those different colors lit up in. But I'm able to do it just this one time, set my effect, set my color, set my thing, what pixels it does, and then every time I call that light, I'm just calling this same output sequence. That way, if I wanted to change it later on, I say, nope, I don't want red, I want it to be orange. I change it in one place, and all the times we ever trigger red light is now orange. Here are my actual action triggers. So this is the meat and potatoes of what is making this thing do things. Up here at the top, I have solved. When we enter the solved state, then turn the relay on, make the lights green. When we reset, when we leave the solved state, turn the relay off, turn the light off. Here is when any are pressed. This only works in the armed state, and when any are pressed, then go to stage 1. That allowed state is important because otherwise, every time I pushed a button, it would reset me, which I don't want. My fail, when any fail, then do this little yellow animation, go to the armed state, and then go back to stage 1. The reason it has to go stop at armed is so that if I'm in stage 1, we actually haven't shown this yet, but well, here, let me show you that. Here I have my stage complete. When any success happens, then go to the next state. So this is actually just advancing by 1. So I don't have to have a bunch of action triggers saying, when 2 succeeds, go to 3. When 3 succeeds, go to 4. I just say, when I get a success, move 1 forward. Here I have my actual lights. When I enter stage 1, here's my output sequence. When I enter stage 3, my output sequence is red light, green light, blue light, and it's triggering those 3 sequences. Each of the sequences actually only being 1 light. Now, because this is how that works, when I fail, I want to go back to stage 1 and I want to play the stage 1 light, the red light. That way they know what they need to push. If I'm in stage 1 and I fail, I still need to be able to play that stage 1 thing. And so that's why the fail actually goes to armed and then back immediately. Otherwise, if it was in stage 1, it would never enter stage 1. And then I have these that trigger just off my buttons, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All they do is trigger their output sequence light. So that's just tying those buttons saying, okay, when I push the button, it does the light, and then also it's getting read by the input sequence based on what state we're in. So that is the setup here. There's a good number of things going on there. It's all pretty simple. They're pretty straightforward, but there are a lot of them. So this is a good example of one that you can pull up in the firmware. We've got it baked in there. So you can pull it up, take a look at it, explore, build on it, expand it out, or just kind of pick it apart and see how we did it, how I happen to wrap my head around it this time. Now, on to the third game. Here we go. This is our third game in our Advanced Buttons series. This one is going to be Whack-A-Mole. So I've actually taken some of the concepts we had a little bit from the first one, the nuclear key codes, and then a lot from our Simon game. And we've got a Whack-A-Mole game that we've built here on the Nexus Ultimate Prop Controller. So showing you how that game plays. If we come down here, this one I added this button, and when I push this button, it starts, and it's going to light up a couple of my things, and that's telling me hit the red button. If I hit it in time, oh, I didn't hit it in time, and so I got a fail. So again, I do this. If I don't hit it in time, I get this little failure with red. If I do it again, and I hit it in time, then it gives me the next one. It's green. Oh, I didn't hit that one in time. All right, I'm going to hit them faster this time. So I do green, da-da, 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 da-da. I hit them all in time. I got my thing. I whacked all the moles. If I do it and I hit the wrong button, then I'm also going to get my fail. Try again, hit my right, my wrong, get the fail. Let's do it again right. All of them. There we go. So fun little way this is going. Right now we don't have timers or anything like that in here. We do have our sequences though. And so here's how we're doing this one. Over here, my states, I have a number of states. I've got armed, which is just ready for the first go. I've got mole, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I have a solved state and a failed state. And that's how we kind of handled this one. Now, we're doing a lot of auto transitions. And so here we've got these delays, and that's how we're handling that failure. If I time out, I go to mole 1, and I don't get to mole 2 within 1200 milliseconds, it autos to failed. If I do hit the mole, then it stops that auto and keeps like pushing back my timer. But that's how we're doing this of like, that 1200 milliseconds is what it's waiting, saying you got to hit it in this time. If not, you go to failed. If so, we keep pushing back death. And then when we solve or fail, either way, we automatically reset back to armed. And so this game is kind of running itself there. Over on the behaviors tab, I do have a couple logic rules. And this is actually a really interesting way that this works. So I have 4 different logic rules, and they are the wrongs. So in mole 1 wrong, it's looking for any, and it's saying, look, you should be pushing button 1. If you push button 2, 3, or 4, that's wrong. In mole 2, it says if you push button 1, 3, or 4, that's wrong. And so each of these is being listened to only within that state to say what was the wrong one to go. Down here in action triggers is where I have all the bulk of my game. And again, there's a lot going on. They each are very simple, but there's a lot of the triggers. So I have something that happens when we enter armed. I have something that happens when they push the start button. When we enter armed, we make sure that the relay is off, and we make sure that the lights are off. We just clear both of those. When we start the game, that's when I push the start button. That's my 5th button there. When it gets pressed, we go set the state to mole 1. And that button only works in the armed state. That way I can't like restart my game halfway through a game. Mole 1, 2, 3, and 4 prompt is where those happen when we enter those states. So when we enter state mole 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are doing these light effects. The light effects are the same ones I used in my Simon game, but I've moved them up here instead of triggering them as output sequences, because these are actually the only ones that push them. I don't actually have lights when I push a button. I only have the light for my prompt, and then if I don't push a button fast enough, it just moves on. So there's my 4 prompts. I then have my hits. My hits happen when the correct button is pressed. Remember that we have a wrong that we'll see in a second here from that logic rule of if I pressed any of the other buttons. But if I hit the right button, and then that is gated inside of this state. In mole 1, I need to push 1. For mole 2, I need to be in mole 2 and press button 2. And then of course I have my fails. And these are the ones that are listening for each of those logic rules and are also gated only to their state. So when I'm in mole 1 state, that's when if I trigger any of the buttons that would trigger mole 1 wrong, this fires. And what happens? It immediately goes to the fail state. I guess I didn't call out on the hits. What happens is it immediately goes to the next state. So as long as I keep hitting them within time, then they get advanced. If I don't hit them in time, it auto transitions. And if I hit the wrong one, it deliberately fails and jumps straight to there. When failed, when we enter the failed state, it gives me it stops the lights to make sure they're clear, and then it gives me my bad lights on red. And then of course, when solved, it stops the lights to make sure they're clear, and it gives me my relay and my good lights. And so that is this game. Yet another one that we're gonna go and put in there. You can take a look, you can load it up, see how we did it, play around with it, use it as your base. But there you go. That was 3 little advanced button games on the Nexus Ultimate Prop Controller. If you have questions, if you have one you want to see us build out or something that you're interested in, we'd love to hear from you over on our Facebook user community or here within the comments. Keep making cool things.